Welcome live to the Power Hour. We're delighted to be joined live on Zoom by PCD members and guests from all around the world. We're also broadcasting globally on YouTube for a live stream audience. So welcome to the first of these Power Hour live online events. What we're trying to do with this concept is to bring to private wealth professionals fresh new ideas and a bit of energy. Everyone's feeling a bit down right now. So we're trying to give you some practical and implementable ideas for private wealth professionals from the sphere of marketing, business development, and social media. So we're going to bring, each month, we're going to bring a new expert to focus on a specific part of that area to help you drive your business forward. Today, we are delighted to be working with a friend of PCD, Graham Aikin. Welcome, Graham.
Morning. Thank you. Morning, everybody.
Now, Graham, you've done an awful lot of training with PCD over the years, variety of sessions, from sessions we've done in Hay Hill with senior practitioners. We've done some next gen stuff. Your background from the private wealth sector is pretty unique. It gives you an interesting insight. I mean, perhaps you could just give the viewers who don't know you already a quick flavour of your expertise in this area and why we've done so much previously with the private wealth professionals that are part of PCD.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, David. Morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to today's session from a rather dull and dank Kingston upon Thames in London. So yeah, welcome everybody. Really exciting hour or so ahead of us. Lots to cover. It's going to be quite quick and pacey, but David will talk about logistics and how to ask questions in a moment. Those of you who've not met me before, I've worked in the wealth management industry for around about 18 or 19 years. I was a private banker / wealth manager for Coots Bank here in London, who I'm sure you're all familiar with. And then for the last coming up 9 years, actually 9 years next month, I've been running my own business. And although if you look at my website, it's got social media in the title, I focus almost exclusively on LinkedIn training. And that is LinkedIn training for wealth managers, asset managers, private client professionals. And I was actually looking yesterday, I've actually trained almost 7,000 individuals on the use of LinkedIn. So without sounding too big-headed, I don't think there's much that I don't know about using LinkedIn from the audience's perspective. So I know David is very keen for this to be an interactive session. So long as you don't interrupt me too much, because I've got a huge amount to cover, that'll be awesome. Feel free to interact and ask questions. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Back to you, David.
Thanks, Graham. I mean, give him a heckle, give him some banter.
Absolutely, yeah.
Ask some tough questions that we will take on right at the end. But just to give you a sense of what we're going to cover in this hour, we're going to cover practical stuff. So how to optimize your profile for LinkedIn, how to maximize the free search tool that's available to find new contacts. We're going to talk about the perfect post. A lot of airplay gets on the algorithm. You know, what components does the perfect post need? Graham's going to unpack a little bit of that for you. And also we're going to get the crystal ball out and we're going to look at some prediction for 2021. But just before we get into it, Graham, I mean, 2021 has to be the year for LinkedIn, doesn't it? You know, the coffee meetings are gone, the conferences are gone, PCD's event live calendar is largely gone until we get back to the autumn. I mean, if people are looking for contacts and they're in the private wealth sector, you know, LinkedIn has to be a component of that mix of what they're doing and their networking strategy. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I'm starting to see some wealth and private client professionals starting to consider Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at a personal level. And I think there is a place for those. But as David said, you know, for me, where else can you go for business information, business contact, business news? LinkedIn is very much it. And certainly, you know, if my business is any barometer, I've been tinkering around quite nicely for 7 or 8 years. And all of a sudden last year, my business has exploded because the demand amongst private client professionals is greater than ever before. You know, no face-to-face networking, no conferences, the ability to prospect, the ability to speak to clients. I'm going to share in a couple of minutes some interesting statistics from LinkedIn about how much the usage of LinkedIn has increased in the last 10 or 12 months.
Brilliant. So get your questions coming into the chat as we move through. We're going to take them all on at the end for our Zoom audience. So Graham, if you want to load up your slides, we will get cracking. I'm going to interrogate Graham as we go along, throwing in some questions for him to try and answer to keep him on track. But Graham, over to you.
Cheers. Can you just give me a thumbs up, David, on the slides?
Perfect.
Excellent. Good. Okay. So in terms of today's session, as I say, I'm going to share LinkedIn's hot off the press usage statistics in a moment, just to kind of put a frame of reference around today's webinar. Take through some important updates to your LinkedIn profile for this year. Some of these you may be familiar with, particularly if you're subscribing to my email newsletter. You may be aware of these, but LinkedIn are constantly tinkering around with profile features. So I'll give you some tips around that. Quick reminder of LinkedIn's free search features. Certainly when I'm running my webinars for my clients, this is the bit that my clients enjoy the most, because these free search features allow you to start finding and targeting those key demographics that you may be looking to build relationships with. So I know that those search features are a really good replacement, if you like, for those face-to-face aspects that David mentioned that we can't do at the moment. Some changes to the newsfeed algorithm. So this is constantly changing. LinkedIn are constantly tinkering around with how the algorithm works on the newsfeed. So we'll talk a little bit around that. And then a bit about a fun bit at the end around my predictions and also wishes for new LinkedIn features this year. Some of these are gospel, some of these are definitely happening, but as I say, some of these are more around what I'd actually like to see from LinkedIn this year. And then if we've got time, we will talk about company page updates. That is kind of a whole other subject in itself, almost warrants a whole webinar in itself. So we'll see how we go. We'll see whether there's any particular questions around LinkedIn company pages. But I think most people on the session today are probably not managing company pages. And so it's probably those first 4 or 5 bullet points that are probably most interest to today's audience. And I'm going to add a little teaser in at the end, something called the social selling score. We're going to have a little bit of a competition, friendly competition at the end of the session. Don't know whether you can think of any prizes, David. I'll leave that with you. Just how you can measure your own individual LinkedIn activity. And as I say, I'll come back to that at the end of today's session. So hopefully that's kind of broadly what you're expecting from today. So if you're happy, David, we will dive in.
Let's get stuck in, Graham. Looks great.
Okay. So hot off the press, I'll say hot off the press, this is about a month old now. LinkedIn's latest membership, as we can see there, 722 million members in 200 countries and regions worldwide. And then we have a breakdown there by some of the major markets. So UK, over 29 million members. Italy, 14 million, South Africa, 8 million, Singapore, 2 million, etc. So it has got real breadth and real depth. I think when I started my business in 2011, it had 130 million members, and we're now at 722. So still a massive growth rate, and I'll come back to the growth rate in a second, actually. Just on the right-hand side here, just to emphasize the point, how much LinkedIn is being used in this COVID era. And some interesting statistics here. I won't go through them all, but just 2 or 3 just to point out. Right at the top there, LinkedIn live streams have jumped 89% since March 2020. For anybody who isn't aware, LinkedIn Live is essentially similar to Zoom, sort of a live broadcast within the LinkedIn newsfeed. I've seen a lot of people using that. I think one of the problems, David, for private client professionals is if you do a LinkedIn Live, it's available to any LinkedIn member by default. And so you can't control the audience. So it's a great way to get your name and your message out there to a lot of people, but they may not necessarily be the right people. But certainly think, sort of that viral exposure, if you're looking for that on LinkedIn, something like LinkedIn Live is definitely something to consider. 6.3 million members attended virtual events on LinkedIn. So that's not just LinkedIn Live, but this event that David is promoting today via his LinkedIn event page, 6.3 million members have attended those events on LinkedIn in 2020. Every month, over 1 billion interactions happen on company pages. So I imagine most of your companies or businesses have got a company page, starting to see more engagement on those. And I think the one at the bottom as well, a 23% increase in messages sent year on year on LinkedIn. Certainly most private client professionals, the ability to use LinkedIn as an alternative way to communicate with their contacts and clients, that's seen significant increases as well.
That event page is hugely powerful. If your company is organizing a webinar, the way to get eyeballs on that, and it's so simple to actually invite your contacts to it, and then it goes a bit viral because their contacts see that you've accepted. So it's a very powerful tool. Anyone doing their own or doing webinars with colleagues, it grows your audience massively. Yeah,
absolutely. Something that isn't on there that I imagine we will probably get a question on at some point today because it's quite topical. LinkedIn Stories, which a lot of people may have seen now on the mobile app. very similar to Instagram stories, where you can film these very sort of short, snappy videos. They're starting to take off even more. I have to say, in my experience, I haven't seen great use of it by private client or wealth management professionals. It's certainly been used at the corporate level. I saw one last night from, I think it was JP Morgan, and another one from Pictet Asset Management. So perhaps at the corporate level, LinkedIn stories are being used. If anybody's got any good examples of using it personally, we'd love to hear them, because I haven't really seen many of those. And then the stat, which always blows my mind, I've just added separately here on the left-hand side. And this is official from LinkedIn, 3 new profiles being created every second worldwide, which, being the slight geek that I am, I calculated that to be around 95 million new members every year. So
is there a sense of how legitimate every new profile is? LinkedIn kind of because that's an important part, isn't it? There's no point having 700 million users if they're not legit. So, I mean, how do they kind of make sure that those numbers are real, kind of thing?
It's a good question. Most people tend to create a new LinkedIn account using their personal email address. And obviously there's effectively no way to verify that. If you're using a business email address, it's a little bit different. So you're right, David, how many of those 3 are legitimate? Even if only one was, that's still 30 million new members a year. They did announce probably about 12 months ago now, they'd found about, I can't remember the exact figure, but it was around 100 million fake LinkedIn accounts. So they're there, definitely, without a doubt. But like I say, it's still a big stat, whichever way you look at it.
Absolutely.
So I thought that was just quite useful, just to give you a bit of context in terms of the growth in the use of LinkedIn in the last 10 or 12 months. So your profile. Now, I can't imagine for 1 minute there's nobody on this webinar that hasn't got a LinkedIn profile, but I just want to give you 3 or 4 tips around 4 key sections of the profile, which LinkedIn have updated in the last few months. I just want to talk very briefly about your photograph and banner image. I'll jump onto LinkedIn in a moment for these. Your headline section, I'll just explain the changes to that. The about section, 1 or 2 changes to that. And then this new section called featured, which LinkedIn rolled out in about April or May time last year. Most LinkedIn members should have it now, but actually very few LinkedIn members are using it. And it's a brilliant little section of your profile. Makes your profile visually a little bit more appealing, allows you to add certain types of media to your profile as well. So I'm just going to jump across to LinkedIn, and I'm just going to go to my profile and just give everybody just a few little tips and tricks around recent changes to the profile. So here is me. Before anybody says Paul McKenna or Theo Paphitis or Harry Hill, I've heard them all before. So no quips about lookalikes. Thank you very much. So right at the top there, you can see I've got a banner image. Not many LinkedIn users know that you can change this. So you can see there, my 2 main markets, London and New York. I've got a nice picture of those there. So I would encourage everybody to have some sort of photograph or banner image across the top of your profile. I think on mobile, it makes your profile stand out a little bit more. And we're just looking to grab the reader's attention and encourage them to scroll down into different sections of your profile. So maybe you've got a corporate banner image. I expect you can have something a little bit softer, cityscape, a mountain range, a nice beach, that kind of thing. But as I say, when I run my workshops for clients, not many people are aware that you can actually change that. And I think that looks a little bit better than just that sort of gray and black banner image that LinkedIn pre-populates for you. So I would encourage you to do that. And your headshot, it might sound obvious, but it still amazes me how many private client and wealth managers who are relationship managers don't have a photograph on the profile, or if they do have a headshot, it's not visible to the correct people. And so again, it's just something I wanted to flag because it's come up quite regularly in my client workshops, is you can actually change the visibility of your headshot now. And so if I just click on mine, you'll then get a pop-up, and in the bottom right corner, you can actually set the visibility of it. And so you can see there, you could have your photograph just visible by your connections, via your network, by everybody on LinkedIn, or you can ask Google and search engines to pick up your image as well. So worth just checking that. Like I say, a lot of people tend to have their photograph on there, but they may not have set the visibility. My view is it should be set to all LinkedIn members. You want people, even if you're not connected to them, to be able to see what you look like. So I do think it's important just to check the visibility of your headshot.
I hadn't seen that before, so that's interesting.
Yeah. Then your headline section. So big change on this. Again, you may have seen it if you saw my newsletter in about October, November time. They've changed the character count on this. So it used to be 120 characters, which was about that much. And it's now 220 characters. Mine is 219. So you've got now actually 4 lines to try and come up with something a little bit more creative that tells the reader what it is you actually do. So above and beyond just job title and company name. I think there's a little bit of feedback that this perhaps looks a little bit busy. And I think that's fair. You know, it looks a little bit wordy and a little bit busy perhaps, but actually those of you who are familiar with the concept of SEO on LinkedIn, search engine optimization, the ability to add some keywords to your headline section will start increasing the visibility of your profile. So I would encourage everybody to try and max out that character count. As I say, 220 characters there, which is about 4 lines, as you can see on mine. So I've got my job title and company name. I've got a sentence that describes what it is that I do. And then I've got some keywords there as well for visibility on the algorithm. So I thought that was quite interesting. You might not want to use them all, but as I say, from 120 to 220 characters for that headline section.
Because without that, for you, Graham, if you left it at high net worth social media solutions, people coming onto your profile, actually, you might be an agency, you might be a whole range of things, whereas you can spell it out there.
Yeah.
Within the private client professional space, it could be saying, I'm a private banker focused on working with entrepreneurs, or I'm
That's
focused
right.
on
Yeah.
trust and corporate services professional focused on working with clients in the Middle East. Or if you've got a very specific book,
Yeah.
it's good to give it a flavor, isn't it?
And that's where I see a lot of professionals succeed with LinkedIn, is where they've got a niche or a specialism or a particular area of expertise, and they can exploit that on their profile, particularly through that headline section. I'll just show you one example. So I've done quite a lot of work recently for Rathbones, and this is Michael's profile. So he's got a nice picture of Newcastle, the River Tyne there at the top, and then his headline section, he's got his job title and company name, he's got the fact that he's chartered, he's got some keywords in there as well. And then he's got a bit of geographical focus, which I think is quite a good idea. So Northeast England as well. So I thought that was quite a nice example. Something I'll talk about a little bit later, but I'll mention it now, is something that I believe is coming from LinkedIn, is the ability for us to actually record this headline section. So almost have a 30 or 40 second recorded elevator pitch on your profile. I think that'd be quite a nice touch, actually, for people to actually be able to hear you speaking about what it is that you do from your headline section. All right, so that's the headline section. Similar changes to the character count on the about section. So I'll just expand this just so everybody can see it. So again, they've recently changed this from, where were we, 1,200 characters, and it's now 2,000. To be honest, I'm not sure that makes a huge difference to us, really. I don't think anybody should be writing 2,000 characters in this about section. You're going to drive people crazy. Mine is about 900 characters, and I think it's more than long enough. But just to be aware of that, if you really, really, really want to expand on this section, you can take it up to 2,000 characters now. Okay, and then the big change last year was this featured section, which again, a lot of people on today's session may be aware of, but when I'm running my webinars, very few people are. And as I say, I love this section because it makes your profile visually a little bit more appealing, because this featured section allows you to add things like PDF brochures, market commentaries, quarterly investment reviews. You can add in videos, you can add in website links, you can add in presentations. So I'd encourage you all to think about, what IP have I got now? What brochures do I use now with my clients, my network? And perhaps you can add those into this featured section of your profile, just to make it visually a little bit more appealing. And people can click on these and obviously view them full screen as well. I suppose just speaking with my compliance hat on for a second, make sure it's the most recent version of that document or brochure that you've got on here. And also anything that you put in here shouldn't be too time sensitive. So I wouldn't be putting into here things like a weekly market commentary, or else you're going to have to remember each week to put the latest one on there. So I generally say nothing changes at more than quarterly, I think is about right. You can add in up to 50. Again, please don't do that. Nobody's going to look at 50 documents or brochures in here. As you can see on my profile, just 2 brochures or PDFs fit in the space quite nicely. All right, and that's the idea behind that featured section. I'll just show you Michael's again, just by way of example. So you can see, just to give you a flavor, is attached an article there from one of his colleagues. You've got a one-page PDF there, Rathbones at a glance, and then some other brochures and links as well. So this can be brochures, or it can be links to particular web pages of your company website, for example. And the other point I just wanted to make on this section, which is, it's only a tiny little change, but it is worth doing, is you can see on mine, I've added some hashtags, some hashtags, which are phrases, against each document or brochure. And again, that is also worth doing from an SEO perspective. So don't just add brochures or links into here. When you actually add them in there, you can actually add your own text or wording in here. And it's worth adding in some hashtags that explain what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis. All right, and that, David, I think was everything I wanted to mention on profile today. They are the major changes, the changes to those character counts, and then this new featured section as well. I'm just wondering whether you want to take any questions on profile.
There was a quick question actually from Tim Barber about
Hi, Tim.
Changing he didn't seem to have an option to change who sees my pic. Is it solely for paid for, or is he just sort of approaching it?
No, it's free.
Anyone should be able to edit that down.
Yeah, so it goes to you, obviously the Me menu on the top menu bar, click on View Profile, takes you to your profile, click on your photograph, and then you'll get that pop up.
Well, Tim, if you're still struggling, drop Graham an email, I suggest, but you should be able to do that. So thanks for your question.
Yeah, strange. Yeah.
Questions rolling in. We'll take them on as we move through. Nothing there yet, Graham. So I would just carry on to your next section, and we'll keep on going.
Yeah, time goes quickly, doesn't it? It's 23 minutes past already. Yeah. Okay, so moving away from profile, I just want to bring everybody up to speed on the free search features on LinkedIn. When I run my workshops, a lot of my clients say to me, it's a great workshop, Graham, but actually the best bit you covered by far was all around the search functionality. And so I just want to give you guys a bit of a sense today as to how the search features work. Because as David said, if we can't do networking events and conferences and anything face-to-face, these search features are a great way for you to start finding and targeting those key demographics that you may be looking for. All right, so I'm just going to go back to my homepage.
I mean, I've used this personally when I was in banking, trying to build contacts. When I was first going out to Switzerland, I used the STEP members group and the search functionality, connected to people with a little message, and it worked a treat in terms of being able to piecemeal add contacts. Now, that was in a face-to-face era, but the same principles can still apply. If you're looking for contacts, particularly internationally, I think the power of this search functionality is something you need to be aware of and have a strategy around.
Yeah,
because when we do come back live, you've then spent these few months actually building out a little pipeline, adding to your network, not wasting time, and then you'll be able to follow up with those who you maybe met on Zoom through a LinkedIn contact and get more productive into the back end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And this works both on a B2B basis and a B2C basis. I'm going to share with you in a few minutes, once I've shown you how this works, 3 or 4 little very quick success stories of wealth and private client professionals generating new business, generating new clients through these search features. So I suppose the way to frame this is, I would ask you all to think about, if your perfect new business contact or perfect prospect knocked on your front door now, what would they look like? And I don't mean physically, obviously, be careful. I mean in terms of demographics, particular job titles, industries, sectors, keywords. Think about those key demographics. And as I say, with a bit of perseverance and tenacity, I can almost guarantee that you can find those demographics using these search features. And as I say, these are all available on the free version of LinkedIn. You do not need to pay for LinkedIn for any of these search features that I'm about to show you. Okay, and they all work through this search box in the top left-hand corner here. And you've all probably done it. You put something in there, you got somebody's business card and you put their name in there and away you go. But anything you put into that search box is not filtered down in any way. So if, for example, I was to put something very broad like John Smith, all it's then going to do is look among 722 million LinkedIn members for John Smith. That's no good. We need to find a way to filter that down. And the way to start beginning these filtered demographic searches now is through something called Boolean logic or Boolean filters, BOOLEAN, which some of you may have heard of. Don't worry if you haven't, it's quite a technical subject. Essentially, the world around us would collapse without these 50 or 60 different Boolean filters. So the electricity grid, our mobile phones, our PCs, all work through these Boolean filters. But don't worry, you don't need 50 or 60. You actually only need 3 words. And it's these 3 words that bring the power to LinkedIn search. It's the word not, the word and the word or. Not and or. So let me just show you a real life example of how this has worked. I've done quite a lot of work last year for Julius Baer, private bank, I'm sure most of you are familiar with. And one of their bankers said to me, he said, Graham, if my perfect client walked through the door now, it will be a director of a private equity firm in the Geneva area. And he said to me, how do I find that demographic on LinkedIn? And this is how you do it. You put your first search term into that search box within quotations or quotation marks or speech marks, whatever you want to call them, which in this scenario was the word director. So I'm capturing the sentence or the word or the phrase within those speech marks. Then a space. And in this scenario, I use the and filter. And to make this work most effectively, your Boolean word there should be in capital letters. Yeah, so it works most effectively when that's in caps. Then another space. And then my second search term in this scenario was the phrase private equity. So I've not put in a location yet. All I'm looking for is any LinkedIn user worldwide with the word director and the phrase private equity on their profile. All right, then we just hit enter. What LinkedIn will then do is produce a list of all sorts of rubbish it wants you to look at: people, jobs, companies, articles, all sorts of things. What you then want to do is click on the people tab, and that will produce you a raw search result. Hopefully everybody can see there about 692,000 results, which is huge. And it looks pretty accurate, doesn't it? You know, director, private equity, etc. But we need to find a way to filter that down even more. So across the top here, again, all on the free version of LinkedIn, you have these additional filters. So for example, under locations, you can put in a country, town, or city. So in this scenario, we did Geneva. And they've changed these geographical drop downs recently. It's a bit peculiar. We've actually got Geneva, Switzerland. We've actually got Geneva, and we've got Geneva metropolitan area. So just be aware of that. When you're putting in a town or city, you actually may need more than one option there to capture the entire demographic.
Stick Switzerland on just in case someone has just put Switzerland, or I suppose, you know.
Could do, I suppose.
Belt and braces, I suppose, isn't it?
You could try that, yeah, if you wanted to. We'll just leave that as Geneva for now.
No
Hit apply, and it gives us even more manageable now, 1,500 results. So it's filtered it right down to just those 3 locations. Or I could say, right, I just want to find people, for example, in my first and second line network. So hit show results, and I've now got an even more manageable 385. So you can keep filtering down as much as you like, until you've got these search results of filtered demographics that meet your search criteria for free. If I was still a banker now, I would be all over this. I think this is absolute gold, because as I say, with some perseverance, you can find almost any kind of demographic that you may be searching for.
Quick question, Graham. In the Q&A, we've got a question from Laura Daly at Equium Group. Thanks for your question, Laura. It's just looking at the Sales Navigator in general, and how you'd rate it in the context of private clients. So this is all on the free version, but what would a Sales Navigator access allow you to do on top of this kind of functionality?
Great question. It's a really good question. So there's different versions of premium. So there's one called Premium Business, which I think at the moment is about £40 per month. And the differences are a little bit different, but fairly marginal compared to the free version. But then, as Laura's mentioned, there is this sort of all singing, all dancing version of LinkedIn called Sales Navigator, which on the moment I think is £70 per month, something like that. So it's quite expensive. You know, you're looking at £700, £900 a year investment. But as Laura's mentioned, Sales Navigator effectively it's a whole other platform. So if I was using Sales Navigator, there'd be a little button up here that says Sales Navigator. And when you click on that, it opens up a whole separate LinkedIn platform, which is almost like a standalone CRM or database. And it does lots of things. One of the major things that it does do is all of these filters here, there's even more of them. So for example, there's things like number of years experience, size of company by headcount, different geographical locations, function of the person, so where they work in marketing or IT or that kind of thing. Seniority level is quite a good one. So you can search by, C-suite, chief executives, managers, VPs, directors, etc. So if you are really looking to leverage your LinkedIn activities, Sales Navigator is definitely worth considering, but it's £70 a month. You could take out a 30-day free trial, obviously, experiment with it. If you don't like it, cancel it on day 29. So that's one of the major things you can do on Navigator. It's got dedicated news feeds. So once you run these searches, you can actually have a news feed just containing news from people within this search result. So it sends out these sort of little signals around what your prospects are up to. So it is a really powerful tool. But for most LinkedIn users, the free features are normally sufficient.
The free search will give you a good sense of the population, won't it? So if you were going to do a Sales Navigator license, well, if you've worked out that there's nearly 400 contacts there, say, who are director in private equity firms, you might have other variables. You might be looking at Jersey or New York. And
sure,
using the free searches, you can get a sense of the population size, can't you? And if you see a lot of your targets, then you might think, well, it's worth a try, because if you can convert any of these leads, but it just proves to you how many of those contacts are there as a little sample, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly the way I've run my business in the US by using the free search filters. And then if there's been particular demographics I'm looking to build relationships with, I might then have a look for them on Sales Navigator. One of the other major upsides with Sales Navigator is it gives you the ability to message anybody on LinkedIn. So even if you're not connected to them, you can message them. Generally speaking, on the free version, you can only message people if you're connected to them. So that, again, is another major advantage to Navigator.
Quick point from John Howarth in Cyprus. Hi, John, thanks for your question. It's saying once you've identified your contacts, how do you suggest an approach? I mean, it's not to be too formulaic, but what would you recommend to people who are making those?
Yeah, great question. I'm giving away my secrets now, John. It's normally something you have to pay for, but I'll just give you a bit of a sense. I suppose my major tip is, well, I suppose a couple of things flowing out of this search result. The first is don't connect to people from the search result. A lot of people go, that's very exciting. 385 people, connect. Don't do that, because it doesn't give you the option to personalize that connection request. So I suppose my major big tip that I'd like everybody to take away is, if you are looking to connect to people, go to the profile first. In this case, we'll go to Sarah, and connect to people via their profile, because that then gives you the option to add a note and personalize it. And you can see there you've got,
isn't it, and relevant, say
it's relationships, isn't it?
Dear Sarah, saw your profile. We're working a lot with private equity professionals in Geneva. Maybe we could have a quick chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's got to be relevant. So, John, I mean, really what you've got to do is, what are the things you want to offer these people that are going to catch their eye? And then how do you put that as a little hook to get them connected? Because once you're connected, then Graham, you can message to tee up a call or whatever it is. You're in touch at that point. But that initial message has to contain enough for them to think you're worth, their time effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I can't stress that enough. Like I say, we're all in the business of relationship management. I don't know what you guys think, but one of the things that really brasses me off on LinkedIn is when somebody I don't know sends me a connection request and they haven't told me why they want to connect. Because my philosophy is very much quality versus quantity. I don't want to be connected to lots of randoms that I don't know. And so certainly from my perspective, when I'm reaching out to people, I definitely 100% of the time personalize the connection request. Excuse me. So I suppose that's my major tip to John. Yeah, outbound connection request, personalize the wording, definitely. I've also just included on the slides here, I'm just going back to my slide deck, just to give everybody a bit of a flavor or a sense of how these search filters work. These are some that I've run recently for clients. So that top one there, directors of private equity firms in Geneva, directors of esports companies in the UK, quite topical, esports, yeah, 536, owners of tech companies in Zurich, 3,500, football agents in Greater Manchester, 520, and then estate planners in the Greater Los Angeles area, over 4,500. So like I say, it's in 7, 8, 9 years of running my workshops for clients, it's very unusual that you can't find a search result. It happens. Are you going to find, I don't know, Steven Gerrard on LinkedIn? Probably not, but you're going to find his football agent. Are you going to find retired people on LinkedIn? Probably not, but you're going to find private client professionals who service those retired people. So like I say, it's just a case of thinking a little bit creatively, a little bit outside the box around who you're looking to build relationships with. But like I say, I just think they're incredibly powerful, particularly at the moment when we can't get in front of our networks.
It's probably the wrong search. If you're yielding no results, it's probably the wrong approach, isn't it, Graham? It's not that they're not there. It's just the way of looking at it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Any other questions and any of that coming in, David, at all?
In the chat, so we'll move on. And
how are we doing? Okay, we're all right.
Keep your questions in.
So third and final topic for today, and then we'll do some other bits and pieces as well, is this concept of the perfect LinkedIn post. Now, I could bore you all to death for the next 3 hours in terms of how the newsfeed algorithm works, around how it's weighted and how it's coded, how the underlying coding works, and how you get the best exposure. But to sort of summarize all of that very quickly in the next 5 or 10 minutes, I just thought it's worth taking you through what is currently the perfect LinkedIn post. And what I mean by this is all of these engineers who work for LinkedIn out in California spend a huge amount of time making small tweaks to the algorithm. And they tell people like me, so I can tell people like you, how to get the most exposure. And so this perfect LinkedIn post is the way to structure a post that contains 4 or 5 different elements that will give it the maximum exposure on the newsfeed. And I've got 2 or 3 of the sort of best practices on this as well. So this is all about, if you're looking to originate content, this is not about liking and commenting and sharing content that's already there. This is about you taking a particular piece of news from your company website and you want to originate that and push that out to your network on LinkedIn. And these are the elements of this perfect LinkedIn post. And I say this is as things stand currently, because this could all change tomorrow. This is one of the downsides to the algorithm. It's constantly changing, but as things stand today, these are the elements that you need to structure this perfect LinkedIn post. So the first thing is you need to add some text or add some wording to the top of your post that is at least 235 characters long. Now, you don't need to count the characters. In my experience, it's about 3 lines of text, 2.5 to 3 lines of text, something like that. So that wording or so that text triggers the see more button. And that is the most important part of the perfect LinkedIn post. You need to be getting people to click on see more, because that is a hard click. The algorithm can measure the fact that people are clicking on see more, and then the algorithm is therefore thinking people must be interested in it. If they're not clicking on see more, perhaps they're not interested in, and therefore we're not going to give it that visibility. So that is the most important thing at the moment, adding some wording that triggers the see more button.
People do that sometimes by just having space, don't they? So
yeah, not a big fan of that. Yeah,
you do see that, don't you? I don't agree with it, but you know,
I don't. I think it looks a little bit naff, if I'm honest. You know, they'll just put a couple of words and then 2-3 lines and then some more words, so it prompts people to click on see more. But no, I'm not a big fan of that, if I'm honest. You need to include an image, and the importance of that will become clear in a moment. You need to add a link. Obviously, you're looking to drive traffic to a particular web page, so adding a link as well. And then the change, which is, it's only a tiny change, but it's actually quite an important change, is you need to add at least 3 hashtags. Now, as of about 2 weeks ago, they said add 3 hashtags. What they're now saying is add at least 3 hashtags. So my advice would be add 3 to 5 or 3 to 6. You know, don't be adding 30 hashtags like you see people do on Instagram, because that just looks bananas. You know, 3 to 5 or 3 to 6 hashtags, excuse me, I'm losing my voice, seems to be about right at the moment.
Great question from Katie Dodd from Cerno Capital, just asking, what's the best time to post on LinkedIn? I mean, I know there's a hell of a lot of research on this kind of topic. What are there optimum amount of times to post per week? Is oversharing a thing, or you know, what's your sense on the quantum and times of day?
Yeah, good question. Sorry. In terms of frequency, best practice at the moment seems to be around 2 to 3 times per week. I think if you do it more than that, it can look a little bit corporate, a little bit salesy. And if you do it less than that, you certainly don't get any momentum in terms of the way the algorithm works. So most advisors will do, you know, a weekly market commentary and then perhaps 1 or 2 other articles over the course of that week. So that's the first thing, frequency, 2 to 3 times. I think the other big thing is don't just share corporate content. I think if you're just hammering out, for example, your own company's content, that again can look a little bit corporate. Softer stories, more human content is always very well received. So that's the other point. In terms of best times to post, that's an interesting one. So pre-COVID, it used to be the best time to post was pre-rush hour. So perhaps 7 to 8 a.m. or 4 to 5 p.m., something like that, because most LinkedIn users actually look at LinkedIn on the mobile phone on their commute. Obviously, now in this COVID era where far less people are commuting, I haven't seen any recent statistics from LinkedIn around the best times to post. My inclination is it's probably weekdays. It's probably weekdays, and it's probably something like Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday afternoon, Thursday afternoon. That's probably, as a general rule of thumb, the best times to post.
And the reason for that is, I guess, then if you've got your audience there, if people are seeing it and liking it and interacting with it, that's what keeps it in the feeds, isn't it? So if you're posting at 7 a.m. and there's only a small proportion of your audience online, then it's not going to get the interaction and it's not going to start taking off, is it? So that's why you want to hit those pockets.
Absolutely.
Where you're, and it depends on your geographic market. If you're, North America focused, it's going to be late from the UK. It's going to be late afternoon. If you're Asia focused, it's early doors. All of those. And also, I think in this environment, people are doing less on weekends. I mean, I think historically people used to put the odd post up on a weekend or have a little
Sunday nights. People used to post.
But I honestly think that right now people are just up to here, and I think like you say, the main traffic is weekdays 9 to 5. People are online.
Seems to be. Yeah, it does.
Different behaviour, isn't it?
I mean, if anybody wants to, I've not had the opportunity to do it. You can just have a look on Google and say best times to post on LinkedIn. And there might be some recent research there from LinkedIn or for some other companies, but I suppose, don't overthink it. But on David's point, think about your audience and when they're most likely to be on there.
I mean, the other thing, Graham, is like Hootsuite or some of these scheduling kind of tools. They can help you with that because you can then schedule your strategically schedule your posts rather than having to be on the phone at 2 p.m. and all of that. I mean, maybe give us briefly of how those kind of things might work.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of tools. There is Hootsuite, which for individual users, just one user, it's free. It's dead easy to create an account. And as David says, you can just hook up your LinkedIn account to Hootsuite. If anybody doesn't know, it's HOOTSUITE. You can hook up your LinkedIn account and you can say, right, I've got this piece of content. I want it to go on LinkedIn on Monday at 4 p.m. Or I've got this piece of content. I want it to go out on Tuesday at 10 a.m. So it's a big time saver. You can spend a little bit of time, perhaps on a Sunday evening, scheduling all of your content for the week, and then it's done. And Hootsuite does lots of other things as well. And then there's sort of the premium, sort of more corporate platforms like Hearsay Social that I've got a close relationship with. That is bought at a corporate level rather than an individual level. But again, that's a fantastic tool for scheduling content, archiving content, lots of compliance tools within that platform as well. Hearsay Social is a fantastic tool. It's not cheap. Yeah, it's definitely not cheap. This is not Hootsuite that's free for individual users, but a huge number of wealth managers across the world now who are embracing social media are using something like Hearsay Social at a corporate level to manage the employee presence, manage the corporate presence. I also think from a compliance perspective, it takes a lot of the responsibility away from the employee, because Hearsay Social, you can actually create all the content, put it on there, and then employees can just pick off the content that they want to pick off from that platform. So yeah, as David says, there are those third-party or external platforms that you can use. One common question I do get is, can I schedule content directly on LinkedIn? And the answer to that is no. In fact, of my predictions, David, that wasn't one of them, but that would be a good prediction for LinkedIn, wouldn't it? The ability to schedule content directly on LinkedIn would be very useful.
Absolutely. Quick question here from Alex Tui at Canaccord in Isle of Man, just saying, what's your view on the etiquette around accepting, ignoring connections? Do you have a rule of thumb around that?
Yeah, I have a rule of thumb, and I have a rule of thumb that I talk to my clients about. My rule of thumb personally is I don't connect to anybody that I don't know unless they look like somebody I can do business with. Yeah, I had somebody connect to me yesterday who wanted to sell me Bitcoin. No interest. Yeah, somebody connected to me, wanted to sell me website content. No interest. So I'm strict. I'm probably way too strict than I think most relationship managers should be. I think it needs to be a balance. I think what I would say is, and again, I do this in my business and I recommend it to my clients, is once you've got a new connection, try and do something with them. Or else you might as well just be on Facebook collecting friends, send them a message, send them some content, suggest a meeting. If you're just building up your network willy-nilly, I don't see a great deal of mileage in that. So it's a good question. Should I accept or ignore randoms? My answer is no, unless I can potentially do business with them.
Yeah, I would say don't agonize over it. Just look at the guy's profile or man or woman's profile and say, can this person add value to my network over the long run? If no, quit, no or yes. Yeah. And the bulk we know, if you don't already recognize them, they've got to be pretty decent in order to bring them into your network. But
people are not going to get, if you ignore somebody's connection request, they're not getting a message saying Graham has ignored it. So just freely ignore it. Absolutely. Yeah. A couple of other things around where the algorithm works. So that's how to structure a post. A couple of other bits and pieces. Document or video posts currently have the best reach. So if you can put some videos on there, that will get a lot more views because it's a little bit more engaging. It's obviously visual. And when I say document posts, things like a quarterly investment commentary in a PDF format. Yeah, PDF brochures, that kind of thing. Are also popular posts and have the best reach at the moment as well.
LinkedIn articles taking a bit of a backseat, do you think, in favour of other mediums? Like that initially was quite a big deal, but I think now you see far fewer of those long form things.
I can't explain the rationale. I don't work for LinkedIn, unfortunately, but yeah, I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, everybody was writing sort of full length articles on LinkedIn and they were getting thousands of views. For whatever reason, LinkedIn have changed that now. And I spotted it myself. I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago around sort of your housekeeping checklist for 2021. It got about 30 views. I mean, it was nothing for the effort of putting in writing it. Yeah. So, I can't give you the exact reason why, but I would not invest a huge amount of time in physically writing long form articles on LinkedIn anymore.
Quick comment here from Tim Barber, just saying on the tone, you see if people put something more personal, depending on the individual, that can sometimes take off because in this time there's a lot of sort of empathy, sympathy. People are going through some tough times right now, and actually by sharing a little bit of that in the right way, you can actually communicate to your network what's going on with you, and people appreciate it, kind of thing. I think there's no hard line, is there? There are some things that are clearly over the line in terms of shouldn't be on LinkedIn, but the lines have moved, haven't they, since COVID? Do you agree?
They have. I think with LinkedIn, the natural inclination is to just hammer out your corporate content. And I get that. There's obviously reasons to do that. But as you say, David, the more human posts, a couple of good examples. I saw an advisor last week and he just filmed himself, sat at his desk, talking about what he was doing that week. So he didn't mention any client names, but, I'm going to meet this client, do an annual review. I've got to take some money out of a portfolio for a client. And it just gave you a bit of an insight into an investment manager's life day to day. Mm-hmm. I saw another wealth manager just taking his dog for a walk, and he just filmed himself taking his dog for a walk, talking about some of the issues that his clients are facing at the moment. All of that kind of stuff, particularly videos, will get a massive number of views and just makes it a little bit more interesting, I suppose, than just that corporate content.
Right.
What else we got on here? Is there anything else? Oh, yes. Getting really geeky now, getting really nerdy in terms of the way the algorithm works. Just a last bullet point there. There is this concept called dwell time, which I won't bore you with, but basically what dwell time is, that is literally how long your post appears visually on somebody's newsfeed. So when they land on it, for how long, it might be half a second, it might be 2 or 3 seconds. That is becoming more important than ever, dwell time. What that naturally leads on to is if you're posting content, you need a visually engaging image so that people stay on it. So if you are creating content, anybody in the session today is creating content, you need visually stimulating image that increases that dwell time. And the other big thing is, and I've spotted this again in my business, is in order to get the maximum exposure on your posts, it's more important than ever before that you engage on other users' posts. Because again, the algorithm is rewarding you. What it's basically saying is, David has liked and commented on everybody else's posts, and therefore we're going to reward David by boosting his post. So it's almost that sort of tit for tat. You've got to engage in other people's stuff in order to get maximum exposure on what you're posting.
I also heard that when you tag people who don't respond to your post, that down weights you. So say if there's sometimes a bit of a trend for people to put anyone they've ever met on a post in order for them to just give it a like and get it moving.
Yep.
Do you think that's right? That
it is right.
It makes sense to me that if you tag a load of people and they ghost it, you know, you tumble down, don't you?
You do. That is true. That is another one that's out there. Yeah. So as David has said, you know, if you want to tag people, you just do the @ symbol and type somebody's name. So if I wanted a particular individual to see my post, I would @ symbol and type the name. That's how to tag them. But as David said, if you tag a particular individual and they don't engage on that post, the algorithm sees that in a negative manner and they'll actually downgrade the post. So there are these sort of what I was called sort of nerdy or geeky things, but I think it's important to be aware of. You know, if you really want to manipulate the algorithm, it is important to be aware of these things.
Question from Sarah here, just saying, how do you measure success? You know, what kind of KPIs, if you're working with a private bank, Graham, I mean, you know, when they're looking at how successful these initiatives are, is it that they just measure it on, well, actually got a pitch opportunity, I got some AUM directly out of that? Is it sort of hard stuff, or is it?
I mean, that's the ultimate way of measuring it, I suppose. New clients, new funds under management, or new assets under management. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's other ways to do it, and actually, I've saved it for the last 5 minutes. Actually, we'll cover it in a second. Is this idea of this social selling score? And when it comes to the newsfeed, it might be number of likes or comments or shares. Again, without getting too sort of nerdy on this, the algorithm prefers people to comment on content than it does to like it. So if you really want to engage on other people's content, comment on it rather than like it. That's a good measure of success. The number of likes is far superior to the number of comments is superior to the number of likes in terms of the way the algorithm works.
And like always reply, isn't it? If someone comments, give them a reply. You know, again, I think that's good manners, but also it does help on.
Yeah, start creating an audit trail of comments. Absolutely. Yeah.
Just another quick one from Tim, just saying about this. Does the algorithm downweight you for steering yourself away from LinkedIn? So if you have a link in the post, you often see post in comments for that reason. I mean, what's the latest on that kind of?
Yeah, that's a good one, Tim. So ultimately, and the rationale behind this, LinkedIn wants you to stay on LinkedIn, obviously. And that's why in the old days, or 2 or 3 years ago, articles were better because it was a long form post that kept the reader on LinkedIn. For whatever reason, as I've said, that seems to be out the window now, articles, long form articles. Obviously, if you're creating content, you're looking to drive traffic to your company website, you know, your news page or your blog page, that kind of thing. That's why you're doing it. In the grand scheme of things, LinkedIn doesn't like to do that, because you are actually driving traffic away from LinkedIn. So one of the ways you can overcome that, it's only a small way, but it is a way, is to write lots of text about the article that you're posting. But as David said, put a link to the article in the first comment box. And that will start creating an audit trail of comments and will give it greater exposure on the newsfeed. So I'd say this is a power hour that was meant to be at a reasonably high level. We're getting a little bit kind of detailed now, but hopefully this is useful for people.
We're lifting the bonnet on all your secrets, Graham.
Yeah, I know.
For the last 5 minutes, so let's get into the last 5 minutes. So is there anything else that we can impart to the?
Yeah. So I just wanted to So a couple of things: projections, thoughts for this year, and these are only my thoughts, generally speaking. I definitely increase use of these LinkedIn stories, so the little short, snappy videos that you can have on LinkedIn. I do think we'll see an increased use of those. However, what they announced about a week ago is LinkedIn are now going to start embedding advertisements within those LinkedIn stories. I think that is horrible. I just think it's horrible. So you'll watch a video and halfway through it, there'll be an advert for a Range Rover, for example. And I think that might be a reason that LinkedIn stories don't take off. If those midstream adverts start annoying people, LinkedIn stories will not take off. But as a general rule of thumb, I think we'll see people embracing stories more. Product pages for company pages. So what that basically means is anybody who's got a company page on LinkedIn, they are rolling out the ability to add particular pages for specific products of yours. And I think that's quite a good idea. So, you know, if you're a wealth manager, you could have a product page for inheritance tax planning, a product page for investment management, a product page for ISAs and pensions. And so you'll be able to highlight particular products and services within company pages.
So there's a quick question there from Laura Daly at Equium, just saying tips on company pages. The Equium company page, I know, has about 9,000 followers, is very well used.
Wow.
And that company, they do a really good job. And so I suppose the tip there could be look out for product pages to highlight aircraft, highlight, funds, highlight different parts of the Equium business, for example.
Yeah, good idea. They are being rolled out. I know some firms have got it, not many yet, but worth having a look on your company page to see if you've got the ability to add product pages. Integration with video sites. David and I have discussed this, the ability to integrate your LinkedIn activity with YouTube, Vimeo, and other CRMs. So on Sales Navigator, you can integrate Salesforce. I think what will come this year is other CRMs, that you can integrate with LinkedIn. I mentioned this earlier, the ability to record into your phone your headline or your elevator pitch, I think would be quite nice for people to hear people's voices rather than just look at their profile. Some improvements to LinkedIn groups are on the way, where my understanding is at the moment groups can be a little bit spammy. You tend to get a lot of desperate salespeople in groups, and I think they're bringing in some controls around that. And these are more my wishes.
These are group gets underused, doesn't it? Could be quite powerful.
They can be. And these are wishes rather than predictions. We spoke about personalizing wording on outbound invitations. I really wish LinkedIn will make that mandatory. Yeah, I'd love it that you can't send an invite to somebody unless you personalize the wording. I personally think that would be a good idea. And this one I think is coming, the ability to control who can comment on your posts. So at the moment, when you post something out, anybody on LinkedIn comment on it. I understand they're bringing in the ability to say, I only want my connections to be able to comment on it, or I only want my network to be able to comment on it. And that'll give you the ability, I suppose, to create almost like a little community around that post of just people that you're interested in engaging with. So a few sort of thoughts and ideas there around predictions for this year. They might be a million miles away, and they probably are. We'll see what else comes, but as a general rule of thumb, some bullet points there that I think will come this year.
All these slides will be coming round to our Zoom audience with a replay of this webinar, so you don't need to worry about scribbling down things and the tips from the other parts as well.
We should have said that at the start, David, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I know.
Last but not least, should we have a little competition, David? Do you want to do that?
Yeah.
So last but not least, we have this, which again, some of you may be familiar with. And this is a screenshot of mine. Every LinkedIn user, even on the free version, so this is available to anybody on LinkedIn, has something called a social selling score, or what LinkedIn called a social selling index. And this is a snapshot of mine as of a couple of days ago. So it gives you a score bottom left out of 100. You see mine is 70. I've never seen anything above 80. So 70 is actually a pretty good score out of 100. And then it breaks that score down into 4 different areas on the right-hand side. So establishing your professional brand is about optimizing your profile. Finding the right people is about running searches. Engaging with insights is around posting content. And building relationships is about interacting with people on LinkedIn. So take this with a grain of salt to a point, because obviously this clearly doesn't relate to new assets under management or new clients, but it might just give you a bit of a sense as to whether you as an individual are undertaking the right kind of activity on LinkedIn.
Where do people find that on their profile, did you say?
So I thought what we'd do, David, I'll show everybody how to find it. And if anybody wants to have a look for their score, I'll put it into the chat box or the Q&A box, and we'll see what some of the scores are. As I say, it might just give you a sense of those areas that you need to improve on your LinkedIn presence. And so the way to do it is keep LinkedIn open and just on another browser tab, just type in, bear with me, social selling index. Yeah, so just Google or whatever your browser is, social selling index. All right, and you're looking for that top result there, the social selling index, SSI, LinkedIn sales solutions. When you click on that, you should then get a page that looks something like that. And then right in the middle of the page, get your score for free. Click on that, and within a few seconds, it should generate a score for you.
So there we go, Graham. I'm 80 out of 100.
Wow, I think that's probably the highest I've ever seen, David. That is high.
Stick it in the chat. Stick your score in the chat. Tim Barber, 74. Very respectable.
Wow, very good. Very good.
79 from DS.
Wow.
Alberto from Malta, 77. Fiona,
That is good.
57. Fiona, you're more of an influencer than that. I would have thought you'd be way up there. So there you go. Great.
It's very sensitive, this, and what I mean by that is if you take a few days off and you don't post any content out, for example, it drops itself right down, and so it changes, as I say, every 2 or 3 days. I've just had a few days off where I've not posted anything on LinkedIn. My engaging with insights has dropped down from about 28 right down to 15, so it is quite sensitive. I think the lowest I've ever seen is 9, which was just abysmal. But 80, David, that's impressive.
They need to jump on your course if they're getting a 9.
Yeah, exactly.
We're on the buzzer. We're out of time. Thank you so much for joining me today. Terrific discussion, as always. Great to have you on. The next edition of the Power Hour coming in February with Louise Donadue, who is a content marketer and expert in creating engaging content. So we've kind of set the scene with a bit of LinkedIn there. Now we're going to talk about how private client professionals can create engaging content. Graham's contact details will come round to all registered, along with the slide deck. Please reach out to him with any hints or tips that you want. But thank you for joining the first Power Hour. Hope it gave you a bit of energy, ideas, and enthusiasm for the job in these difficult times. Thank you for joining.